are ready to move on to our 1215 discussion. That would be by Kelvin Sherlock, and we're talking about MAME.
Good afternoon. The next 15 minutes is ample time. Ample time to talk about Ample. Ample is a macOS front end for the MAME emulator. The origin dates back to KansasFest 2020. I was working on a Hackfest project to generate Morse code tones using the Ensoniq. Sounds simple enough, but I encountered emulation problems. GS Plus wouldn't start beeping. Sweet 16 wouldn't stop beeping. I started adding hacks to work around emulation problems. Finally, in desperation and anger, I turned to MAME, which beeped just right. Before we get to Ample and why we need it, let's say a few words about MAME and the things I like about it. The other MAME. MAME started life in 1997 as the Multiple Arcade Machine Emulator. As the name suggests, it's best known for emulating arcade machines. The Apple II is not an arcade machine, although a few brave souls are trying to change that image. In 1998, there was a fork of MAME called MES, the Multi-Emulator Supersystem. MES emulates computers and consoles and other things that aren't arcade machines. The earliest MES source code I found was from July 16, 2000, and at that time it was already emulating the Apple I and Apple II. In 2015, MES was merged back into MAME, and now MES is a MAME, or if you prefer, MAME is a mess. Either way, MAME is now an Apple II emulator, and in some ways, it's one of the best Apple II emulators. MAME emulates basically all Apple II computers, and then some. It emulates clones you've heard of. It emulates clones you haven't heard of. It emulates clones that you'll hear about later this afternoon. It can emulate an Apple III emulating an Apple II. It also emulates classic and new bus Macintoshes, like the SE, the Macintosh II, and the LC. Since the Apple IIe card is not yet emulated, I won't have anything else to say about them. MAME emulates more than just the computers. It currently emulates around 70 peripheral cards, serial cards, disk controllers, printer cards, SCSI, MIDI, many more. There's WAS support for both 5 1/4 and 3 1/2 inch disks, so you can run copy-protected software as it was originally intended. There's also a very powerful debugger. It works across all CPUs, so if you're using a soft card, or the mill, or a PC transporter, you can debug that code as well. You can step in, you can step over, you can step out, you can step on your bugs. There are breakpoints. There are conditional breakpoints. You can break on memory writes. You can break on memory reads. You can break when a register is modified. You can briskly break until your bug is brutally broken. Other features include tracing, save states, and rewinding. And the internal state of almost everything can be examined and modified at runtime. Serial ports can be hooked up to a pseudo terminal, or a socket, or a file. Here we have the Spectrum 2GS communication program with CRT effects enabled. The modem port is a pseudo terminal login shell on my iMac, just like terminal, which is to say, anything that can be done in the terminal can be done better with MAME and Spectrum. MAME is cross-platform. There is a monthly release, which usually includes Apple II related bug fixes and enhancements like new cards. Development is active. Last year there were around 6,500 commits, which averages out to 18 per day. Not all of them were Apple II, of course, but I counted 30 changes for the 2GS driver and 32 for the 2E 2C driver, which works out to 5 or 6 improvements per month. The source code is generally well written, clean, and modular. There's a lot of it. almost 8,000 CPP files, so it can be intimidating. But I was able to add LanceGS emulation a couple weeks ago. MAME already emulated the Ethernet controller and the EEPROM controller, so the LanceGS card is essentially only 50 lines of new code. There are many smart and dedicated contributors, and there's a strong focus on correctness and accuracy. MAME isn't just an emulator, it's also preserving history. However, that strong focus on correctness and accuracy means usability can suffer. And being cross-platform means it doesn't adhere to Macintosh user interface standards, or any standard. As our friend Boromir might say, one does not simply double-click MAME app. This is a command line to run Total Replay in MAME. The machine is an enhanced Apple IIe. We're using a window mode double-scaled with CRT effects enabled. The joystick is enabled, and there's a CFF-A2 card in slot 7, which is necessary to use a hard drive image. By default, there is a Mockingboard in slot 4, so we get that for free. To be fair, some of this could be set up in the MAME user interface, but I find that to be even more difficult and even more frustrating. But first, we need to set up our config files and our ROMs. That's where Ample comes in. That's why Ample was created. Ample is three things. First and foremost, it builds the command line using a nice graphical user interface. You can select a machine. You can select your visual effects. You can select your RAM. You can select your cards. Some cards have configurable sub-options. The Apple II SCSI card, for example, by default includes one hard drive and one CD-ROM. However, all 7 SCSI devices are configurable. There's also a quick search through MAME's software list, which can be handy for self-booting games. There's everything from A to Z, from Aesop's Fables to Zany Golf. And you can also bookmark your settings for easy access later. Second, we have ROM management. MAME loves ROMs. MAME never met a ROM that it didn't like. Some emulators don't need external ROMs. Kegs and Sweet 16 are happy with one ROM file. MAME's Apple IIGS emulator needs 5. The 2GS ROM, which is split into 2 files, the character ROM, the keyboard matrix ROM, and the ADB microcontroller ROM. Usually, all the ROMs for a machine are contained in a single zip file, but many cards also need a ROM as well. Ample can help manage your ROMs, and Ample can download ROMs from the Internet Archive. Of course, you would only do that if you had express written consent from any copyright holders, their heirs, or assignees. The third part of Ample is MAME itself. MAME on macOS can be tricky to install. If you use MacPorts or Homebrew, it's easy enough, but you still need to tweak config files and open up the terminal. Ample includes a slightly customized version of MAME, so everything is in one place and runs as is, and it can be easily installed or easily deleted. Ample and the custom build of MAME are both universal, so it runs on retro Intel x64 hardware or on M1 Silicon hardware. A full build of MAME for x64 macOS is around 324 megabytes. In standard Apple II units, that would require a cluster of 5,000 64K Apple IIs, or 625 Apple crates. The Ample version of MAME only includes Apple II and Macintosh emulation, so the universal build is only 228 megabytes. There are friendlier keyboard shortcuts for common actions like pausing, rebooting, toggling the mouse capture, and fast forward, so you don't need to drop into MAME's user interface quite as often. Command W or Command Q do not close the window or quit without warning. They're passed on to the emulated machine. If you use 2GS desktop software, you'll appreciate that. And finally, Ethernet emulation using the VMnet framework for use with Ethernet cards like Uthernet or LanceGS. VMnet is a virtual Ethernet device provided by macOS, which handles routing, DHCP, and DNS. Some Ethernet emulation doesn't work over Wi-Fi. Some doesn't work as a server. But VMnet is better. It works over Wi-Fi, it works as a client, it works as a server. Marinetti works, IP65 and Contiki should work as well. Ample makes using MAME a little bit easier. It has monthly releases to keep in sync with MAME. It's open source and available on GitHub. Thank you.
Okay, Kelvin, we've got about 4 minutes available for questions.
All right, thank you. It's macOS only. That's the only important question.
I see a lot of positive people in the comments saying.
Okay. Yes, there is a binary release every month on the GitHub releases page. You can download it, and then it's got Sparkle, so it will should auto update once a month.
Fantastic.
How is the 3 emulation? It uses MAME's Apple III emulation. See, cool features. I am working on bookmark support right now. It can generate bookmarks, which is nice, but you can't edit them. So that's one thing I need to work on. The control panel. Yes, MAME now supports desktop interrupts. So yes, you can get into the control panel. Total replay differences, there should not be any differences. Command line support, you can generate a console shell script that will launch it if you'd like. Minimum macOS. Okay, it'll run back 10.11. It's the minimum macOS version. I develop on 10.14, then occasionally test on 11. So Big ARM, yes, it runs on Big Sur. It's a universal. Let's see. Downloading and launching an emulator. I should take you no more than, I don't know, 5 minutes. You have to download Ample, then download the ROMs, set up your disk images. It should not take long. If you have a bleeding edge MAME, yes, you can use your own custom version. There was an update last night which fixed that. Snow Leopard 10.11, it'll work. I'm not going older than 10.11. It's too many changes. The website, I will post that in the Discord.
This is a pretty amazing
10.6. That's a long time ago. I think MAME might work back to 10.4. But if it doesn't work, don't blame me.
So further questions in the Discord. Thank you, Kelvin. That's amazing. As I've said. And